Good morning, everybody. I am going to invite my guest on here. Hope you guys are doing well. It is a rainy day here in San Francisco and cold. Okay.
Hi,
Hello,
Chloe. How
Doc.
are you?
I am good. Can you hear me?
hmm
Okay, great. Let me just silence my notification.
Awesome.
Okay. Good seeing you. I am so excited to see you on here. Hi, everybody. I think Instagram is just telling people that we are live. But yeah, good to see you on this. I don't know how the weather is over there, but it is raining here in San Francisco.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's chilly, but it's beautiful. It's sunny outside. I love the fall,
Oh,
you know.
yeah, one of my favorite
hmm
things. Okay, so we're going to discuss all things sleep today. Hi, everybody. All right. So let's see. Okay. So today, um, I have the privilege of having my friend and expert in sleep medicine, Dr. Funke Brown, Apollo B. Brown, from the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. She is an amazing clinician. She's a speaker and a thought leader on sleep. And so I'm going to talk to her today about sleep and the female brain. So I'm so excited to have you, Dr. Brown, and I would love for you to tell our listeners a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dr. Sharuba. I'm smiling because it's just always such a treat to see you.
Thank you.
So, oh my gosh. So you're one of my favorite people. So
Oh,
thanks. I'm
thank
really
you.
thrilled. I'm glad we're making this happen. Well,
Yes.
like you said, I am Dr. Funke Afolabi Brown. I am a sleep medicine physician. I'm also a pediatric pulmonologist. And what I believe is my zone of genius is to help parents and their children breathe better and sleep better. So I founded Restful Sleep MD with a mission to help busy parents, busy moms especially, and their children to prioritize sleep so that we can all thrive. And so I'm really excited about this talk because sleep is critical to the brain and to the female brain because we have so much potential. And so I'm really excited to chat.
Yes, great. You help people breathe and sleep better. I mean, hello, what could be better? That's awesome. Great. So, for those listening or watching later on, if you're watching a live, please type in hashtag live if you are, or please say hi. If you're watching later on, please type in hashtag replay. And I'm Dr. Prabhakar. I'm an OBGYN and founder of the Fibroid Doc. So that's where we're hosting this chat today. And as an OBGYN, I take care of a lot of women, and I'm specializing a little bit more in gynecology now and menopause, and sleep is so critical, and yet so many women have trouble with it. So, I would love for you to just spend a couple of minutes talking about, why is sleep so important? I feel like we learned that in school, but as life goes on, it's one of those things we tend to sacrifice a little bit more easily and say, oh, I can just get away with 5.5 hours or 6 hours. I'm just going to watch that little extra half hour of TV or just scroll through my phone just for 20 more minutes or whatever. It's one of those things that I feel as the demands of life come on with children and career and everything, it's one of those things that goes first. And so I would love for you to just talk a little bit more about sleep and the importance of sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right. We kind of get pieces of the puzzle that sleep is good. Just sleep. Sleep is helpful for you. But we don't really I feel like we don't understand to as much a detail, and we're not taught as much as in school about the importance of sleep as we are things like a healthy diet and physical activity and meaningful relationships. Really, we don't, there's not much that goes into really helping people understand why sleep is important. And I feel like because of that, it tends to just fall on the wayside, like you said, especially as life gets busier and there's so much more that's filling up our time. Sleep ends up being what is sacrificed you know, really
Yes.
quickly. And so, I kind of move from top bottom, just really looking at how sleep impacts everything we do, right from our brains, right? These beautiful brains we've been given, that is irreplaceable. Really, the cleansing work that sleep has, even on the brain of itself, is something that we're just really starting to understand. And,
Mm.
there's studies that have recently, I mean, not maybe definitely less than 10 years ago, really discovered that there's a system in our brain that kicks in when we go to sleep that helps to cleanse any sort of waste products that may have accumulated over the course of the day.
Mm.
And that is so important because I feel like that probably also contribute, and that's been also shown. Some of those products have been shown to be responsible or associated with things like Alzheimer's, right? And so when we start
Mm.
to deal with memory problems and chronically feeling like you're living in a fog and really not being able to put two words together because you're
Yes.
still sleep deprived, is really, it might be that your brain has been missing that function because you've not given yourself an opportunity to sleep enough to get that benefit. So even to start, I think that is so important. It has such restorative work, cleansing work, not just the rest that we get or the recovery from tiredness, but the healing and the restoration itself is just
Mm.
incredible, and it affects pretty much every system in our bodies. So our heart function, when we talk about things like high blood pressure, our physical recovery, especially as people who, we're trying to exercise more, we're trying to have a better metabolism. All those things are affected by sleep. And then our mood, right? Mental health. Everybody feels stressed, overwhelmed, burnt out. And sleep is something that helps with mood regulation. And so when we're not sleeping, we're really then losing all those benefits, not just in our physical health, in our emotional as well as our mental health. So it really impacts everything.
That is so good. So sleep is actually probably the most important thing we can do. It's
Mm,
not a waste of time, as
mm-mm.
some people may look at it, and I think our culture sort of looks at it. So now coming back to women as we go through our life cycle, when we first get our period, so during puberty, and then later on, 20s, 30s, we're having children, and then later on, the 40s and 50s, we're hitting menopause. Can you comment on perhaps how sleep is altered during these states? Like, I know you specialize sort of in teens and sleep habits in teens. So maybe could you tell us a little bit about, how sleep changes at that time, or what we need to specifically focus on during that time, and then as we move through the life cycle?
Yeah, no, I think that is so important. Sleep changes even right from, if we think about it. Let's even go back to when, from like babies, right? So over the course of time, the sleep requirements, the need for sleep does not change. The amount of sleep we get then changes, in the sense of, when for babies, they need a lot more sleep, anywhere from 14 to 17 hours in newborns. And then as they get older, your sleep needs are changing. So you're needing less and less. So there's that shift. And if you think about it, there's also changes that occur even in our sleep architecture. So the way our sleep is sort of shaped over the course of the night,
Mm.
because we go through different stages of sleep. We go through what you call non-REM sleep, which is sort of that like light stage sleep and deep sleep. And then you go through REM sleep, which is kind of a dream sleep. And so the proportions of this change even within age such that initially we're getting a lot of REM sleep. And during that REM sleep, memory consolidation is taking place, emotion regulation, things like that. And studies have shown that even in young children, it's important for their growth, for their learning, and things like that. But then as the course of time changes, we're getting less and less of REM sleep. So we start to get little bits and pieces of changes over the course. So that's one thing. And then if you think about it, for young children, they sleep during the day, they sleep at night, majority, like everybody else, but they also need naps during the day. And so the need for naps start to change. So we're talking about the young girl now, right? She was a baby,
Yes.
she slept all day, all night, then all of a sudden her sleep starts to get consolidated, and she needs naps here and there during the day. She sleeps most of the time at night, and mom's like, yay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then she goes to school, right? And by the time you get to school, you start to cut back on the naps. You suddenly don't need those naps anymore. And so I want people to pay attention to that, because if you suddenly start to need naps more, that may mean that something is going on with your nighttime sleep. So,
Yes.
we have our school girl now who's gone to school. She's not needing naps anymore, so she can learn in school, engage, and do all that. And then we hit around puberty, and then there's another shift, both in the quantity of sleep we're getting and the timing of sleep we're getting. And so she starts off now having this shift, and it's a shift in our circadian rhythm, or our internal clock, where they kind of have a sort of longer delay in their sleep time. And this is a physiologic shift. It's completely normal and it's expected. And so your 8-year-old who was previously going to bed by 7:30 or whatever, 8 p.m., is now like at 12 or 13 is like, I don't feel sleepy, and it's 10 p.m. and you're like, what in the world is going on? And so that's actually normal that they
Okay.
experience that shift, and everything would have been perfect if they could sleep from, say, 10 p.m. to like 8 a.m., except they can't, right? They have to get up and go to school and things like that. So then they start to have troubles with getting enough sleep. And so again, there's a physiologic change, but then there's the environment that dictates when they need to wake up. And then of course there's technology, and all those things start to build in habits in our teen years, right? And of course,
Yes.
on top of that, they start to they may be premenstrual. So they start to have some mild hormonal changes, some mood swings, things like that, that also may be impacting their sleep a little bit. And then, then we go through those teen years, adolescence, and we get to the young adults, and then childbearing age. And again, the amount of sleep starts to continue to decrease. The shift they had, which was delayed before, may kind of come back. And so you may be able to go to sleep at a more sort of standard time. But then with that, we start to think of pregnancy. And so then there's a change as well during pregnancy.
Yes.
One, because those hormone changes start to take place. There's estrogen and the progesterone, and estrogen causes some changes in our sleep too. Sometimes may, can help with our sleep overall, with sleep quality and things like that. Progesterone also, and so in most cases, early in pregnancy, there may be things that are going on that may impact your sleep negatively, but overall, it should be okay, But then as you get, more advanced into pregnancy, you start to see things like, anemia, right? Which can cause restless leg syndrome. You may start to see that as the baby is getting bigger, just the weight of the uterus itself and discomfort can affect how sleep quality. Now you're getting up
Yes.
to urinate frequently. Now you start to
Right.
feel anxious. Oh my goodness, I'm bringing a whole new human being into life.
Right.
So that brings changes, and then you get into third trimester where you just can't seem to sleep at all
Right.
because
Right.
the uterus is so big, and so it's affecting where your diaphragm is placed. So when you lay back down, it's going to affect how you're sleeping as well. So there are things we can do about all this. It's not to make everybody freak out and think, oh my gosh, what? It does get better. There's strategies and things like that. And then if we fast forward a little bit more, and I love this story that we're telling across the lifespan, honestly, then you become this mom of the newborn, and there's all those changes that occur as those hormones start to change again, right? Start to drop. sometimes we'll get what we call postpartum blues, and you're an expert in all this, so you probably know more than I do, but that impacts the quality of sleep women are getting, in addition
Yes.
to their children not sleeping that well. And then we start to, as we move even much further, we get into menopause, which again, you start to get that drop in, in estrogen, and then you start to experience things like the hot flashes, and then insomnia, and then, maybe some anxiety and stress. And so over the course of time, you could see that you start to notice that there are changes in sleep, and that just really varies over the course of time, both in the quantity of sleep we're getting as well as the
Hmm.
quality. And I think that one thing I would say is important is that it's important to be intentional about our sleep, especially as we advance in age.
Yes, this is just a beautiful like painting from, kind of the early stage to, menopause. And I love what you said at the end, which is really being very intentional
Mm,
about the quantity, the quality of sleep, and really prioritizing that because that does
yeah.
change. I mean, I think back to even like high school about like the fact that I actually did need more sleep, and I would
Mm.
hate when my mom used to come up and turn on the lights, get up, you know. But I'm like, oh, I just need more sleep because I probably was sleep deprived during the week because,
Mm.
as you said, the school bus arrives at 7:30, and
Yeah.
kids have to be up and out. And then, of course, having had kids myself, and for those as an OBGYN, I mean, I can tell that during pregnancy and the immediate postpartum, I mean, forget it. It's just all over the place with
Mm.
trying to raise a newborn.
Yeah.
And then, again, after as we go through our 40s and then menopause hits. And I love what you said about just, really prioritizing that, knowing that, yes, sleep is so important. It's just not kind of a byproduct, and it's just kind of something that we fit into our day, but really we need to prioritize that. And that's something I'm learning as time goes on. So that's so great. So speaking of sleep, like for an average adult, 30 and above, how much sleep do we really need?
Yeah. So, one of the things I say is think of it like a shoe, right? They're usually sort of quasi standard adult shoe sizes, right? But everybody's shoe size is so different. So with sleep, everybody's requirement varies a little bit. There are recommendations by the National Sleep Foundation that says that about in adults, about 7 to 9 hours of sleep is what's recommended. And then usually around by the time you're about 65, I think about 7 to 8 hours is okay. But then you can see that's a wide range. So some
Hmm.
people may need 7 hours, some people may need eight, some people may need nine, which is why it's important to identify yourself, because I feel like sometimes when we try to meet that, like I must get my 8 hours of sleep or else, what it ends up creating is stress and
Hmm.
anxiety and then triggers insomnia. But if
Hmm.
you realize that I have needs and I have sleep needs, and I need to make sure that I meet those sleep needs for me, that kind of brings this whole perspective of, okay, so what does that look like? And so for me, what I say is 7 to 9 is the general range, but the amount of sleep that is best for you is the amount that you need that keeps you alert and well rested, that helps you make sure you're waking up feeling refreshed, where you're not depending on caffeine or needing to take naps during the day. So it's
Mm.
really such an individualized need, but
Okay.
that 7 to 9 is about the ballpark.
Great. Okay. There's somebody, Ibrahim Batir says, hello, my son has CP. He sleeps only 2 to 3 hours at night. What do I need to start first to help? Um, so I think this is probably a question that has many layers to it.
Mm.
But is there a first step, Dr. Brown, that you think he could at least
Yeah,
start to,
to work on.
approach this with? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, children that have developmental differences, again, their needs are different. The only thing right now, what we have with our National Sleep Foundation recommendations are sleep for typically developing children. So I think, first of all, if you have a child who has developmental differences, I wouldn't try to force them into that box. But I definitely
Hmm.
sleeping 2 to 3 hours is not sufficient. So there's so many layers to it. Like you said, like what's the environment like? You want to make sure that you avoid anything too stimulating, that the room is dark, that there's a routine in place that cues their body to fall asleep. Because sometimes, even though light is one of the main cues that tells our brain it's time to sleep, there are other cues in the environment that helps, like meal times, like having a bedtime routine. All those things are very important. So those are some of the basic things I would say make sure you're paying attention to, in addition to making sure that you have sort of a more consistent sleep time and wake time, because that also helps sort of set, parameters for your child and for us as well, where it's like, okay, this is the time our bodies naturally wake up. This is the time our bodies cannot go to sleep. So those are a couple of things that I would say would help.
Okay, great. And I think that's useful information for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
teens, kids, and adults alike.
Yeah.
I am Katina Morrison says, easy to understand. I'm a nurse, so very much appreciating this. I'm in menopause, so valuable information for me. Yes, as a gynecologist, this is one of the areas that I see where people have the most difficulty, as they approach
Mm-hmm.
menopause, because those hormones are changing so much, and the hot flashes and the sweats. And it highlights the importance of your environment, so keeping the room cool or
Mm-hmm.
warm, depending on, how you're feeling. But I think cooler is always better. And then, adjusting that once that's adjusted, you can actually fall asleep better. And for some people, you may need actual treatment with menopause hormone therapy. And so I just put my events there, lamorindagyn.com/events. I do have a menopause masterclass coming up next week for anybody who's in, menopause and having difficulty sleeping. If you want to come and listen to that masterclass, it's free. Just register, and you'll learn a little bit more about different treatment options. So okay, so that's great. Now, what are 3 tips that you would give the average adults today, teen or adult actually? We live in a very stimulated society with our technology and, things coming on our phone, and we have an Apple Watch now and all these alerts coming in, but we also need to get these 7 to 9 hours of sleep. What are the top 3 tips that you would give for someone like us? What can we do to ensure that we're prioritizing sleep and that we are really in tune with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things like you alluded to, you mentioned, is really finding a system, building a system where the technology is not getting the better of us.
Hmm.
Because it's beautiful. Look at us on
Yeah.
across coasts, right? West
Yes.
Coast, East Coast, and here we're communicating. It's incredible. But I think it's here to stay, right? But I think it's
Yes.
really being able to set boundaries. And when I talk about boundaries, usually, and it's funny, even though we're talking about sleep, but then it goes back to boundaries again, where, it's like some of these things, really dealing with mindset is really important. So realizing that your sleep is so critical, making it like an appointment that you don't want to miss, right? Like hopefully if you're in your doctor's office for a visit, you have that doctor's attention for, I don't know, 15, 30 minutes or whatever. You're not going to be like scrolling on your phone and,
Mm.
things like that. You're going to pay attention. So it will take that kind of intentionality, because sleep is medicine. So seeing
Yes.
that, I think that's the first thing, really being very intentional about it. Finding ways, if you need to have your phone plugged outside of the room or across the bedroom, so you're not grabbing it to look at the time out of frustration, then scrolling and things like that is important. The beauty of the Apple, the iPhone, and a lot of the most of the smartphones now is there are options to put your phone in a do not disturb mode. And you
Hmm.
can do that, but limit it in such a way that you're still able to have contact with people, like, your VIP people. So your family or someone that may need you in the case of emergency. Because that's one of the things I hear, like, oh, what if people need me? I don't want to turn my phone off from the world. Well, you can limit the people that can get access to you by just making sure that the people that do, like your parents or family or someone that like, if there's a crisis, they need to be able to get to
Hmm.
me. I think that's very important. If you're a physician and you're on call, then you could just limit it such that only the call from the hospital or something like
Hmm.
that is coming to you for the night. It's just important to protect it. We have to put in this kind of intentionality to be able to make sure that we're optimizing our sleep quality as well as our sleep quantity. So I think those are big ones. And then the third I would say is the consistency. So our bodies are not trying to figure out when it's time for us to sleep, right? Is it is it Netflix binge time? Is it dinner time? Is it, So if you cue your body and say, I'm training you, you go to bed at, I don't know, 10:30 or 11, whatever that time looks like for you, your body starts to anticipate it. And you yourself will start to feel really relaxed once that time starts to come. And
Mm.
this may happen over time, but I think that consistency is key as well.
That's great. I had to smile when you were saying 10:30, 11. That used to be my time. Now I'm more like 9:30.
Okay, perfect. That's good.
you know,
Exactly.
um, as kind of the pressures increase, the things
Yeah.
that our mind is busy, we're learning new things.
Mm,
You're exercising more, whatever it is,
mm,
you're putting a little bit more stress on your body, and your body needs
yeah.
that time to repair and heal, as does your brain. Your sleep
Mm,
requirements may actually increase. That's something that I've
mm,
found in myself, but it's important to pay attention, as you said,
mm,
and be in tune and change. Um, that's such great information. Thank you. So one last thing that I want to talk about is melatonin.
mm,
So many patients are telling me now that they just routinely take 5 milligrams of melatonin or whatever it is. They're like, oh, I have a little trouble sleeping. I just had a patient who said, oh, my husband snores a lot. He has sleep apnea, and his CPAP machine is loud, so I just take 5 milligrams every day. Um, a few years ago, when melatonin was just starting to become more popular, people were using it for jet lag purposes. Okay, if I'm flying across Europe, flying across the country, I'm going to adjust my sleep cycle a little bit, take a little melatonin for a couple of days to help me. But now I'm seeing it routinely in adults and kids. So I would love for you to just comment on the use of melatonin as a daily supplement.
yeah. So melatonin, at least in the US, it's a supplement, right? It's not FDA regulated. You could get it anywhere. But it turns out in other countries, like in Europe, I think even in Canada, it is it's prescription.
Is
So
that
first
right?
of all, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So first of
Okay.
all, just think about that. It's prescribed, but here it's not. And so there's a reason why they in those other countries felt there's a need to regulate it. So
Mm.
it's a supplement. Our brains produce it. It's relatively safe without alarming side effects. But then there are some issues that we have to be aware of. It is sort of, especially the way that it's marketed in large quantities, much larger than our brains produce. So our brains produce a very,
Mm.
very tiny amount of melatonin, very, very
Mm-hmm.
minuscule. And the amount we see that's in the bottles that are sold in the stores are up to 100 times the quantity that our brains produce. So
Wow.
I would bear that in mind. Again, the studies that have been done really have shown its effect in specific conditions, things like jet lag, like you said, or shift
Mm-hmm.
work disorder, or sometimes in people who have this delayed sleep phase syndrome where the melatonin is just produced a little bit later,
Mm-hmm.
or in people who, travel, like in jet lag disorder and things like that. But now, and then also in pediatrics, in children, a lot of the studies that have been done in children have been done in children with developmental differences. So children with some delays, children with things like ADHD, conditions like ADHD or autism,
Mm.
those have shown benefit where sleep has improved with the use of melatonin. So
Okay.
in those contexts, yes, using it as a sleep aid, one, it's not a very strong, what we call hypnotic, meaning that to
Mm-hmm.
put you to sleep. What it does is, what melatonin's role is just to almost like trigger your brain to say it is time to sleep. It doesn't put you to sleep as such. And so I think a lot of people feel like it helps because it probably does have that placebo sort of like, I'm taking this and I'm
Mm.
believing it will help me kind of
Mm-hmm.
effect. So I would say, go back to why you're needing it. If there's a
Mm.
CPAP machine that's on, that's disrupting your sleep, instead of masking it out with that, because then what's the end point of that? Is the
Mm-hmm.
sleep apnea going to improve and the CPAP is going to leave, or are we just going to be on melatonin forever? If you use it short
Mm-hmm.
term, I think it's okay. But if
Mm-hmm.
instead of that, try to say maybe I could do earplugs, That's less
Okay.
harmful.
Yeah.
It's not something I'm putting into my system for no reason at
Yeah.
all, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's fine. Now, there, though, I would say in women, especially in women around menopause, there's been a few studies, they're not really strong, like large studies, that have shown that their melatonin levels seem to be a little bit lower, just like their other hormones are. And so
Okay.
using melatonin in those situations may be helpful, but again, we need bigger studies. You also need to, if you do need to use it, that's fine, but you have to come back to say why.
Yes.
Is there anything that's triggering this melatonin need or supplement or medication need that can be addressed in a behavioral fashion, that can be addressed with, you know, some other strategy, or the other that would help. And so that's kind of my
Yeah.
perspective to it.
Okay, great. And I mean, I'm so glad to hear that because I'm starting to become a little alarmed by the amount of
Yeah.
melatonin that I'm seeing
Mm.
women and even, I have three kids and, a lot of their peers and, stuff like that. And I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
so it's a kind of a new thing and we don't really know exactly, how
Yeah.
much we need and people are just taking a lot. So, okay, that's
Yeah.
great. And I love how you said, go back to the root cause of it and try to
Mm.
see why the sleep is
Mm-hmm.
suffering. So
Mm-hmm.
this has all been such good information. I've learned a lot. I know from the last couple of years that I've known you, and your sleep aura has rubbed off on me, and I know I'm definitely sleeping better and paying a lot more attention to sleep rather than just
Yeah.
all my other things and just this is a side product. But no, this is actually really important.
Yeah.
It helps your body, it helps your brain, it helps you heal. So these
Mm.
are, and I love what you said about future Alzheimer's and memory
Mm.
issues, right? A lot of us sometimes when we're stressed walk around in this brain fog, but actually is it just because we're not prioritizing sleep or
Yeah.
we're going through the motions, but we're not really getting adequate sleep because we're distracted by so
Mm.
many other things in our
Mm.
environment. So
Mm.
yeah, this is such good work. So thank you so much for the important work that you're doing. How can people find you? Tell us a little bit more about the things you're doing to advocate for sleep, especially in teens, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been fun, right? So I actually have a master class coming up this Saturday. So that's December 3rd. And it's for high achieving women who carry sort of that busy as just a lifestyle. And really, it's talking about how we can do this practically, how we can achieve restful sleep, why that is important. And also, I'm going to have a Q&A after. So if you have any questions about sleep, you've tried all the things and nothing is working, if you go onto to either my website, which is restfulsleepmd.com, or if you hop onto my page on Instagram, which is Restful Sleep MD, you could sign up for the masterclass and there'll be a replay and all that, and it's free. And so that's my way of just, especially in this season, it's a joyful season, but it's the most chaotic and the most stressful time of the year. And so how do we prioritize sleep again, even in the midst of chaos, so that, we can continue to make progress and thrive? So that's one place that I'm really looking forward to meeting, some of your folks on there.
Yes, great. And that is this Saturday.
Yes, yes, it's this
Okay. And what
Saturday.
time is it again?
Oh, it's at 10 a.m. Eastern.
10 a.m. Eastern. Okay.
Yep, yep,
Okay.
yep, yep.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. And then
Okay,
also,
great.
my Instagram page, I usually
Mhm.
share a lot of stuff on sleep. So that's just my own way of getting that word out there, because I feel like I'm
Wonderful.
starting to see the shift, but I really am looking forward to see more of a change in that narrative where we're now prioritizing sleep.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'll definitely share that with my people. I should be there at that masterclass at 7 a.m. for me, but I will be there because that is just so important. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing this valuable information. So appreciate it. I know this has been helpful for me and to everyone who is listening. Please tag a friend or share this with a friend who will find it useful, maybe a colleague, a family member, especially during the holidays. We actually need to be taking care of ourselves and our brains
Mm.
by getting good, restful sleep. And please follow Dr. Funke at Restful Sleep MD. Thank you so much and have a great
Thanks.
day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.